much more like it. So this is, again, this is what the link tree is in there for this one. We'll take it from the top a little bit, right? Just so y'all can see how it actually was supposed to flow. Okay. If you might want a second device, your notebook and water. Again, I welcomed you all to Equation for Success. I told y'all some of the background for how this became a thing, how my two worlds, my math and SEL, merged together, for sure, for certain. And actually, you know what? Because that part, if we're taking it from the top, I'm going to take it from the top because that part is really one of the most meaningful things. So again, just understanding the layers and how it just continued to build for us getting to SEL and math, being fluid in growth and fluid in connection in all the different ways, right? So, a few different layers. So we had a situation where I took over a classroom. We were about 5 months maybe into the school year, and I was their fourth teacher. So that was a spicy class at first. They tested me. I mean, 'cause listen, everyone that they bonded with that came to the classroom ended up leaving for different reasons, right? Then I had a couple students, one particular year that this was a year that I was like, I'm going to embrace being myself a little more, not just these, because as an early teacher, you're told a lot of different things about who an educator is and what they do and what they don't do. And yes, some of that is true, but that leaves a lot of early teachers looking for where do they insert themselves and their personality in the situation. So that was the year where it was a conscious decision to embrace being myself as an educator in a deeper way so they could just see the human side. And it made a big deal. To this day, a number of the students are like, I remember the first day we walked in, you were, telling us how it was going to go. You were explaining some things and you smiled. And a couple of the young ladies said that it just struck them so much because they had never been in a math class where someone had smiled before. So that was a big deal. But it was the very next year when I said, okay, there has to be a shift. Something different has to happen for sure, because there was a young lady, I'm eating lunch, the educator lunch. I had about 15 minutes left. The classroom door flew open. And before I could even react, someone was like, Jones, you have to come. She's going to leave. She said she's going to drop out. And I'm like, well, who? They told me the student's name. So, okay, without knowing anything else, I said, okay, well, let's go investigate. Let me see what's going on. So it was clear to me at that point that this student's experience at her new school, in her new state, but in the same grade, was not going very well at all. She hadn't had anyone, even though she had 8 classes on her schedule. She's interacting, somewhat with these different adults throughout the day. There hadn't been anyone yet that has shown up for her, that has spent time, taken the time to help her process and navigate all of what was happening in her space, right? So that's when I realized, this was urgent and I really needed to be a part of her village, because she was literally going to leave and drop out in 7th grade, right? So what I want you to understand, I want you to think about that, yes, we're going to be focusing on systems, strategies, and connections that you're creating in your own classroom or at home. But are they empowering students to feel seen, feel heard, and capable? Yes, all three. Are all three of those things happening? Okay. Are you helping them to see that math and learning are more than just numbers? There's a lot of layers, a lot of life things happening as well. We're helping them connect those dots, making these connections. So we're exploring how we integrate SEL into math instruction and how we can transform those moments of doubt, frustration, right? A lot of these feelings that come with practicing math sometimes. We're going to transform them into opportunities for confidence and growth. So together, we'll learn about building these systems that not only teach math, but nurture the whole child. So let's dive into it. Now you all can see The legal agreements. Yes, yes. Very, very important here. All right, so the agenda for today. So running through the main thing you see there, the main thing is I want to be clear that success in math comes from confidence, and the confidence comes from connections. So those are the main pieces. We're making sure we build them up, right? Where they're okay with their mistakes, they're trying new things, and their brain is constantly trying to make a connection with this new concept and something already in their schema, already in their background, their previous knowledge. That is the goal. All right, social norms, ran through these earlier, but it looks a lot better now, right? So the main one we want to focus on, the third one, assuming and exercising positive intentions always. All right, y'all. And again, thank y'all so much for making sure or being patient as I was making sure to clarify what was going on with the slides. We had the formatting issue, but we're back. We're back. So we went through the connector activity, let me count the ways. And the whole point again was to make sure that we're flexible in our approach to classroom life, to home life, teaching math, and in general, as we approach and teach our young people these different things. So remember, for that one, we did something super simple, basic. Let me count the ways. How many ways can we get to 4? Remember, we were super clear not to be specific about any operations to use, what numbers to use, what, like any of those previous things. So people were super, super helpful, super creative. Okay. All right. Next. So just a little something about me. Right, Anika S. Jones, I am super serious about my S. Please say the S. At this point, what I want to just really emphasize is that there's so much intention and support behind the village, especially being a village for the kids, for the young people, whether it's them understanding and learning more about themselves, / if it's them learning and understanding more about math, right? And all of that just kind of coming together. All right, so our objective, y'all, the highlights, they're highlighted in a different color. We want to make sure that these strategies and things we go through, that yes, you feel empowered. Yes, they're actionable. You can work on them right away because we're making sure that the students feel confident, that they build some resilience, especially in math space. And that's going to contribute to their academic success. All right, so we're talking about the case for SEL, right? Like, why is this a thing? Why should we be worried about this? Okay. For a lot of people, a lot of things we can say about this case for SEL in terms of why are we building confidence? Why are we focusing on motivation and things? Y'all, a lot has happened. So we know, first of all, math can feel very overwhelming for many students for many reasons, for adults also. So that's why that gift is selected, because a lot of people, when you start mentioning math, honestly, that's how people may look or feel all at once. And that can come from family commentary. Oh yeah, I was never good in math, and oh yeah, that's not your thing. You're not right. Speaking that, classroom connections, maybe the way things are taught or processed, not necessarily taught, either or, thought or processed is just very disconnected, right? So maybe the students are not making the connection between how ratios can be used in cooking class and can be used in mixing paint, and so just the connections are not being made. So math is on its own little island, right, in their space and in their minds. From there, also, it's like, I know people are tired of referring to it, saying the pandemic. So I'm gonna say the panini. So also the panini, right? The pandemic, because students especially depending on where they were developmentally, what grade that they were in. A lot of cracks are showing in the foundation. A lot of cracks. Usually, when a student is having a certain kind of issue, we can tell. We can tell exactly where they were when COVID hit, what grade they were in, what skills they were working on, right? And so it's a lot of layers here, and we're going to build some of them out. But again, y'all see a couple of these facts as well on the slide. A couple of these facts, right, is from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, right? The National Science Foundation of Emotional Learning. You all here, there's a few different things, a couple of things we didn't say. Also, math anxiety starts as early as age 6, right? Some people are saying even before, as we're starting to expose kids to more earlier. Yeah, and this is from the Developmental Science Journal. And then also SEL interventions reduce math anxiety and improve performance on an average of 11%. And that's from CASEL. A lot of people have heard that acronym, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And even though they are like the poster child organization, right, the grandfather organization for social emotional learning, I want you all to notice that literally in their acronym for their name, academic is first. So they're not disconnected and disjointed for them at all. Not at all. It's all connected. And that's part of the point that we want to make sure we emphasize. All right. So also, when we're talking about how, right? Okay, it impacts academic. That's what you said. A couple surveys and scientists found that out. We did some research, but let's look a little more closely. Let's lean in a bit into why, right? Some of the peers and when they're exposed to SEL strategies and practices, why they're outperforming their peers by that 11% or so. Okay, so we have a side by side here. What math without SEL is like and what math with SEL is like. So students are leaning in to embrace the challenges. Students are being honest about their feelings. They're asking for help, though. They're communicating. Okay, all of these things, y'all, it's a lot of reasons and a lot of layers. Focusing on, okay, is it right? Is it okay? Yeah. And that's it versus leaning into the problem solving, the strategy, the context. So this is one of the ways when sometimes parents like to talk about new math. They call it like, this is new math. I don't know how to do that, right? That's new. The reason why math is being taught differently, it's the same math, first of all. It's the same math. The reason why math is being taught differently is because a lot of generations, right, since public education has become a thing, a lot of people understand or kind of understand what to do. Like, okay, when I see these fractions we're multiplying, I'm supposed to multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, but without any context. Or I know that a negative times a negative equals a positive, right? And you just learn the rules. But when people are just learning rules, quote unquote, a lot of times they get mixed up and confused on when to use them. So even working backwards, thinking about that integer, right? The positive and negative example I just gave, we were having a high number of students, of people using that rule. Okay, the negative times a negative equals a positive. Or they just knew two negatives made a positive and they were using it for addition or for subtraction, not multiplication and division, because there was no context for why that is a rule or why that is the approach, why that works. So now so much context and the depth of understanding is being built in that in some cases it is confusing because different generations, including my own, we were not made to learn that. We didn't understand the how. They gave us the what. This is what you do. For the young people, well, how can you get there? What are different strategies you use? So all of that. So depending, right, on what the student has been exposed to, in terms of social emotional learning in the math classroom, when working on math at home, this will kind of dictate how they approach different situations and different scenarios. And that's what's making the success happen, right? That increased 11% or not. That's where that is coming from. Okay, so a lot to say here while we're bridging SEL and math, right? We want students to understand their own potential, their own potential. Sometimes this is what happens. And so some conversations and some surveying with young people in the classroom, but then from different populations. So the classroom and at home, whether it's special education, gifted, right, GT, general education, or English language learners, these are some of the things that have come up. They say, okay, well, maybe my teacher, my parent, my adult is talking too much, right? I'm trying to understand, and it's taking way too long for them to explain, and the student gets lost, the young person gets lost. Class life, maybe you're really excited about it, right? You went to school, got your degree, so you know a lot of the big words. So you're using those big words trying to help the young people understand, and we need to make it plain before building them up in the concepts, in the academic vocabulary, right? So not talking over their heads, right? So sometimes what's coming up really often, especially like I said, we can kind of tell what skill a student was working on. It's based on it's really based on the mathematics phase. So the concrete to representation to abstract, right? So did they get to touch the material? Did they get to touch something, some kind of manipulative that's connected to the concept? Before we had them draw the picture or they saw a picture. Before we gave them a word problem. Sometimes we're skipping straight to representation. Well, you see the picture of the square, right? So what's the versus, okay, let's build the square, talk about the square, and then continue to progress through the different phases. Again, some of the things, right? Thinking about SEL in math class. So sometimes students have said, you know what, I just feel overwhelmed when someone else gets the answer quickly. I feel like I can't keep up. So maybe they're struggling with processing, right? Their processing speed or actually understanding the concept. So the SEL remedy, teach self-regulation strategies like deep breathing when feeling frustrated and emphasizing growth mindset. That mistakes help us learn. So even if your answer is not correct, we can still learn from the mistake and process and talk about the mistake. Some other students said, I hate when people think I'm not trying because I need help. They think I'm just sitting here. Okay. So what they're struggling with is just being judged, right? Being judged. And again, process time. That's a big deal. Sometimes when we're asking students questions, people like to rapid fire questions, but take a moment, give them that time to think, to process through. And we can also incorporate peer collaboration, because peer collaboration is low stakes, right? They want to talk to their friends anyway. So give them something to talk about with some structure, right? Talk about this math concept. This is the flow. Talk about this first, then that. So give them some structure and some flow, but let them talk to their friends about math. And again, it's low stakes. And that helps to celebrate diverse strengths, right? Maybe their friend is a little stronger in this concept than they are, but the friend will be sure to show up and help their friend. So other students are like, math is boring. Math is boring. I already know the answers before we even start. So that issue is lack of challenge or differentiation, right? So the students are checked out, I'm bored. So the SEL remedy is making sure we encourage goal setting, right? Individual goals. Everybody can't have the same goal. They're individuals. They need different things to do. So that includes self-challenging tasks through extension activities or independent projects, right? So sometimes students have said, well, I just get really nervous. I just get really nervous when I make mistakes because everyone expects me to be perfect. So this comes up a lot with the kids that when they start getting that label of gifted and talented, right? That perfectionism, fear of failure is an issue. But the more we make mistakes, and so listen, sometimes you might make a mistake by design. You might make a mistake in your math on purpose to show them it's okay. The, you know, the ground didn't open up and swallow you. Nothing caught on fire, caught on fire randomly. But then truly in a more structured educational way, model error analysis. Like, okay, this is a mistake, but how can we learn from this, right? So that you being able to identify your mistakes is a strength. And then that's when you can introduce them to journaling and reframing mistakes again as that learning opportunity. All right. So sometimes students say, hey, I know the math, I got it, I know it, but maybe I don't know how to explain the answer, especially in English for some of our English language learners. So language barriers can impact communication and participation. So we can use sentence stems, visuals to support while they're having these discussions, right? To foster a safe environment. We've talked before about using color coding, and we'll be more specific about that in some other content in lives a little later in the year. Some students are like, listen, we're supposed to do this homework and I don't have the same materials as everybody else. So I feel left out when we're supposed to bring our homework back to class and I wasn't able to do it. So maybe they're having some access issues to certain resources. So SEL, the remedy there is to provide equitable classroom supplies and create some homework options that don't require necessarily an extensive amount of external resources. So they won't have to get online. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, right? Maybe it can be a verbal check-in practice, right? There's a lot of different ways to check in with students to see what they understand and what they do not understand. So someone also said on the same level, that same thought, that math just really doesn't feel important because I have bigger things to worry about at home. Very valid. Points were made, right? So there's competing priorities, or they're in the midst of survival stress, we call it sometimes. So in the classroom, we have to foster these relationships and provide lessons about managing stress and also prioritizing tasks in a way that helps them to focus on the appropriate task at that time, right? One thing you might be worried about, it cannot take over your whole day. So helping them understand some of these SEL strategies. Yeah, lots to do, lots to do. Excuse me. So we're just taking a quick glance at one of our frameworks called the proof framework. A lot of times when students see these word problems and see these questions, y'all, to be honest, they're freestyling. They're just going through like, I see some numbers. I'm going to circle it and I'm going to figure something out. I'm going to put something on this paper. So with the proof framework, or I know a framework that's popular in different districts, some people use cubes, they call it. Other people use UPS check, but it's a strategy. The whole point, right? We can call it all these different things, but the bottom line is that when it's a word problem, some people say story problems, the young people need a strategy. They need some specific steps to do. So yes, sometimes it's presented as a checklist, and sometimes it is an acronym so they can remember the order of the steps. But this is the whole point, so that they have a checklist, a strategy, some steps that they can go through to keep them organized, focused, and on task for this, right? Okay, so we'll think through a couple of scenarios. So at the elementary level, a second grader, Jenny has 3 apples. Y'all, it's elementary. You know she was going to have some apples, right? And it's Jenny instead of Johnny. Haha. So Jenny has 3 apples. She buys 4 more. How many apples does she have now? If we're going through the strategy, first, we're identifying the problem. We need to figure out how many apples Jenny has, right? So they go through step by step. We'll go back and look at the steps. So the reasoning, What operation might we need? What operation might we need to figure out how many apples Jenny has? So whether the child says adding, subtracting, they explain the reason. We want to know why. Remember, I told you that's one of the things that's different. People keep saying new math is the same old math, but the young people now are learning the how right behind the strategies, not just what the strategy is. Do this, multiply this, then add that piece. Then they're understanding the how, and that way they're also developing multiple ways to get there, multiple ways to solve it. So on the SEL side, again, we're going to encourage the students to reflect on how they felt solving it, right? Were you feeling confident, unsure, or curious? So that's just a quick check-in. One, to see how well they know what they know, but two, how comfortable they are building their capacity to be comfortable sharing when they're not sure. And then three, okay, if I'm just curious about some more, like what if she had 8 apples instead, then listen, they're doing all type of wonderful SEL strategies. They're right where we need them to be. Okay. Now at the middle school level, super similar. So middle school, maybe we're in 7th grade. They're telling us about this rectangle, has a length of 7 centimeters, a width of 4, and we want to increase the length by 50%. So what is the area of the new rectangle? So problem identification, because that's a lot, right? We can't just have the young people freestyling. We have 3 different numbers in here. They'll just be circling numbers and doing things. Oh, it's this area, we're going to multiply. Pause. Did we identify the problem correctly? You all, again, going through each step of the framework, right? We identify the problem, explain how we know that that's what we're focusing on, and we're organizing a plan and the operation. A lot of young people do really well, though, with area. Oh, that means we're going to multiply. Okay. But do we have to do something else first with this 50%? What is that for? On the SEL side, part of the reflection is, hey, let them remember, especially middle school. We talked about letting them talk to their peers because they want to sneak and talk anyway. They're going to try. You might as well give them a specific prompt in talking STEM and then give them some structure. While you're talking to your bestie, while you're talking to your BFF, you all discuss some of these strategies. What are some of the ways you're going to solve this? What are you thinking is important? Okay. Can we draw a picture? If we draw a picture, can we use a diagram? What is it going to look like? Give them that group think time, right? I'm really not, I say group think. We're not always a fan of group thinking, right? Because that becomes herd-like. But in this case, pooling the brain power, especially before creating the strategy, coming up with the plan, is an excellent idea. It's an excellent idea. And that helps them build what? We said their confidence. You talk to your friend about it. They were thinking what you were thinking. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Or you didn't have a plan, but your friend's plan made a lot of sense to you. So you still feel confident executing their plan. So again, so much of math practice, math comfort comes from the confidence piece. High school. So we're in 11th grade. Woo! And we're talking about some money for this one, right? So they're asking, what is the annual average percent increase for this company's revenue, right? Maybe this is a business class. Maybe this is where they're doing some of the interest type questions because they have a lot of that late middle school, earlier high school. Y'all, same thing, encourage group collaboration to interpret the problem and share different ways to get there, right? And that could even be, so even if it was before, right, they're getting more of a strategy together in middle school, in high school, let's reflect. So on the backside, like, how did you solve it? What did you get? Okay, well, I got the same thing, but I solved it by using, so we're just building context, we're building strategies, we're building community. The more we can have the young people talk about math and see math every day, the realistic connections, which we're getting to some real world examples in a minute, the more confident they'll be, the more resilient they'll be when they make a mistake, right? They know it'll be okay. They're not going to freak out. So These are the things we want: the confidence and the resilience, understanding that because we are learning, we're going to make mistakes. Mistakes are proof that we're learning, that we're doing something. All right. So we have another connector activity. And y'all, again, feel free to use the chat. But also for this one, for two truths and a lie, we can go a lot of different ways. Some of the adults, you probably have played this before as part of a social, an icebreaker, getting to know you, all these kind of things. But we can also use it for math class, right? We can also use it for math practice at home, different questions we're asking. So I'm just going to throw two out. So these two, this example, these two truths and a lie, and more on the middle school level, middle school, maybe high school. The first connector we did was more elementary like. So for this, and I'll put them in the chat. Let's see. I'll put them in the comments. All right. So here we are. Number one, the Fibonacci sequence is found in nature. Number two, 0 is an even number. Or number three, pi equals exactly 3.14, 3 and 1400ths. So those are our three. There's two truths and a lie. Which one do you think is the lie? Is it the Fibonacci sequence is found in nature? Is it 0 is an even number? Or is it pi equals exactly 3.14, 3 and 1400ths? Which do you think is the lie? I'm gonna give you about 10 more seconds. Think. And again, this one is content related, right? A little more serious, but sometimes they can be silly because we're just doing some getting to know you, right? Or just to understand their thinking. And really knowing that practice, yes, does build confidence. And someone said earlier, reframing a wrong answer as an opportunity to learn more versus an all or nothing type failure. Definitely. Math is definitely not an all or nothing content area mindset. All right, I'm going to take this down. So of these three, the Fibonacci sequence is found in nature. 0 is an even number. Pi equals exactly 3 and 1400ths. The lie is the third one. That's what we use. That's what we round pi to. But pi, the number goes on for a really long time, y'all. It is a really, really long number. So that's why, and I'm really showing my math educator, right? In algebra life, more accurately, people use 22 over 7, 22 sevenths, instead of rounding it, because it's more accurate. All right, here we go. Next, we're looking at, let's see the video load. So we're about to look at a video where we're thinking about just these layers of math class. And again, we're thinking about how we're communicating about math. Earlier, I shared some direct thoughts, right, with the SEL remedies for these are the different emotions and things students might feel in class. But this is literally like a little, not even just, it's adults acting it out, but kids actually wrote the script for this, about this is how they feel about math class. And these are pretty young children that wrote this one. Here we go.
I think it's already starting. Okay, here's your homework. First let me tell you the directions. What form takeaway 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Takeaway. What's 6 takeaway?
So I'm going to pause it for a minute for this. So just even the clarity in the expectations, what they were looking for, right? It was then the adult, and we're talking a lot about this. We have a resource for y'all called Math Talk, the Math Talk Toolkit. So in our Math Talk Toolkit, one of the main things we're saying is making sure that the language matches. Adults at home sometimes and adults in the classroom underestimate the impact of the language choice that they use. Does the language match for what we're saying, how we're asking the young people for how they're going to see it when it's time to show their very best what they know? Takeaway, I promise you, it's not going to be on anybody's assignment. It's not. Not takeaway. Okay. So subtraction, we're finding the difference. Those are in line, those phrases and words. But again, for the Math Talk Toolkit that you will receive, and we'll be posting it in our bio link and everything soon as well. You all, it gives you strategies and ideas because it's the small things. Another example, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. What's the bigger number versus what's one more, what's greater, right? What's the bigger number? Because students misinterpret that a lot. They'll see a longer number if it has more digits. Well, what if there was a decimal there? Like we talked about 3.14, talked about pi a moment ago. It looks longer, but if I showed them 5 and 3.14, that's why we have to say greater. We can't say what's the bigger number because the context gets confused. Okay, just a couple things. And yes, I'm that person that pauses the video to talk. I am. I sure am.
Wait, 1.
1.
No, you take away. So you take away 1 out of 6. How much does it equal?
A little while ago, y'all, we talked about not only wait time, right? As soon as the teacher asked, they're expecting the answer. Not only they expect the answer, they said the answer. Now, how is that testing the skill of the young person? Also, adults, whether at home or at school, one thing that stands out for this as well, if the strategy the student is working, the student's counting on their fingers, don't count on the fingers with them. We need to show them a different strategy because that one is not working, right? Okay, just a couple of things.
What's 10 minus 1?
I don't know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 7, 8, 9,
10.
Nope. Take away 1. Which is this?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So basically, that's how the video continues, right? So I will say that again, we don't want to use the same strategy over and over again, y'all. There's other strategies to use. In this case, we could have used a number line and counted 1 less, right? Or counted backwards. Sometimes we can put tape, depending on what kind of learners we have, right? And we'll talk about that on an upcoming stream, right? The learning styles and how that shows up in math class. You put like masking tape on the floor, put masking tape like on the wall, right? And let them do hops, quote unquote, to go backwards or to go forwards for greater, less, 1 more, 1 less. Okay, so a lot of ideas, a lot of content, a lot of things to talk about here, I'll say. But I hope that gives us some more ideas and just points of reflection for sure. Okay, so while we're addressing a lot of the different things, a lot of the different thought patterns, you all, one of the emotions that comes up a lot and it just builds depending on the level of the assignment, I'll say, is anxiousness. A lot of students express having anxiety, or it might come out as, When I get in the room, like right before I was feeling good. And then when the teacher tells us to open our computers, right? Because it's not necessarily paper and pencil anymore. When the teacher tells us to open our computers, I just feel like my brain goes blank. Okay, so that is, yes, confidence building, but also we're trying to counteract and want to counteract the anxiety that's building and associated with the test. Because if you felt good before you were nailing your other assignments, then it's something about, ooh, this is a test that is causing some issues. So we also have, in addition to the Math Talk Toolkit, we also have test anxiety bingo boards. Y'all can probably tell by the colors which one is for elementary and which one is for secondary. Listen, you're welcome to both. You're welcome to do both, but you can tell which one is for elementary, which one is for secondary. These are just screenshots of them. So, because I know one of them may look a little dark, right? But it's not actually that dark. This is just a screenshot on here, just for illustration sake. Okay, so again, for the toolkit, one of the biggest shifts, I want to say, that may have to happen for the support of the young people at school or at home is, even though it's a Math Talk Toolkit, is to get them to talk more. Earlier in the webinar and the presentation, I read to you that one of the first things students say was they're talking too much, like it's taking too long, right? To either to get to their point, or you're talking too long that they're forgetting their point. And the goal is to understand what they know so we can build from there. Okay. So what do you notice? What do you wonder about when you see this? So the whole point and the goal, again, for the Math Talk Toolkit is for them to talk more, not necessarily us as their adults. So these connections, we'll go through a few. So the 4 categories for math, you all, are number sense, geometry, algebraic thinking, and data representation and statistics. So any math thing that we do can be split into those 4 groups, right? They're called the reporting categories. So when we talk about number sense at the elementary level, that can be counting change, right? Just things to do for these real world connections. That can be counting change during a pretend store activity. And I'm going to say this because if any of you all have paid with cash, excuse me, if any of you all have paid with cash anywhere recently, I bet you the young person that's gave you some stink eye, some side eye. I bet they have, because they're like, what? You don't want to use your card. And so this is bringing that back to their real world connection where we're understanding denominations, how the money works, all those things. Because too many times people are not excited to see you with your cash. They're like, they don't know what to do. So lots to say there. Lots to say there. Another example, we're talking about number sense middle school. Again, we're shopping again. So counting back the change, right? Pretend change, shopping in elementary. For middle school, calculating the discounts. You all, this example is near and dear to my heart because I'll be honest, I remember when my mom taught me how to do this in my head, calculating discounts in the store. What? Yes. So middle school, that's about when it happened. High school, comparing interest rates on a loan. They're getting to more and more closer to adult levels of financial literacy. So we're talking about loans. We're talking about the impact of interest rates, how they work. Okay, we're about to get a loan maybe. What do you think is the best option? Tell me why you would choose that one, right? All of this. Geometry life, elementary, we're identifying shapes. And when I say identifying shapes, yes, just making sure that we're super clear about what these shapes are. We're finding that, yeah, it's like some of the basic shapes, the young people don't know the same. Like the difference between when I'm looking at a square versus a rectangle, the one with the 3 sides, I don't know what that one is. This is like students talking to some of the educators, talking to their parents. So we're making sure that we're practicing with them more about these are the shapes, just simple. Like when you see it, you know what it is, you can name it, call it out. Middle school, maybe designing a blueprint for their dream bedroom, their dream home, right? High school, calculating the volume of a swimming pool. Maybe they're on the swim team. So how you know? Listen, there's a lot, so many tie-ins. We're just naming some, just a few. So for algebraic thinking, elementary, solving for an unknown. That's one thing that is super big. We've talked about this before, that algebraic thinking has always been there. So sometimes students get anxiety immediately when it's like, oh, I have to take algebra, because we hyped it up, because it was hyped up in their space. Because the reality is they've been doing algebra, the algebraic thinking, since pre-K. The first time you saw that 5 plus blank equals 8, when you filled in that blank and you knew it was 3, ta-da, you did algebra. When you got a little older, it became a box, right? Fill in the number in the box. What's missing? You got a little older, then we started using variables. They have been doing algebra since pre-K, you all. So let's not hype it up for them. Let's not hype it up. Again, this is the connection piece we're talking about. This is how we build the confidence. Yeah, we've been doing it too. You have. Let me show you how. You've been doing it forever. Now all we're doing instead of a blank, I put an X. Okay. So let's stop hyping it up. Right? That's creating anxiety sometimes. And I'll jump down to data representation. So in high school, maybe just even interpreting different data sets and trend lines. So you look at what they're into. If they are into skateboarding, let's take some skateboarders, their favorite top 3 skateboarder statistics, and let's analyze them. Let's represent that. What kind of graph did they use to represent the data? Why do you think they chose that graph? Y'all, so much, but let's tie it in. Yes, it's going to require us to be a bit creative, but we can do that. We're going to have to be creative, but we can do that, especially for the young people. Plus, we give them enough. Y'all, they take it from there. They do. They really do lock in. So some of the norms. So we're talking about some of the things that would happen. This is the mindset we want them to have at home and in the classroom, right? That mistakes help us learn. Please ask questions. You all, I'll never forget that I had a class. They were a small class. So, my mind, I'm like, it is really like 8 of y'all. We're going to, this class, we're going to get it this year. And it ended up being the opposite for a little bit. And I was like, I don't understand why they're doing less. Like they were underperforming some of the biggest classes. So one day we talked about that. I called timeout. We talked about it. I said, I've been thinking you all don't ask questions. I said, I know I do a great job as an educator of asking you questions, but you don't let me know when you don't understand. I said, I'm asking you, like, hey, do you understand this? And y'all will say yes. And they were like, oh, well, we didn't want to bother our teachers. So I said, so all of y'all do this in your other classes? And they were like, yeah. I said, it just happened to be you all, and this is the vibe because y'all came together. I said, no, we're switching the vibe up. We're changing that, right? They need to understand that the more you ask questions, that's how we know where they are, what they understand, so we can help them from there. And be kind, be gracious. While you're learning, other people are learning, right? I would tell the young people, and I tell my son, don't be that person that because you got it and someone else is still working on it, you're all of a sudden you're impatient. No, don't be that person. Don't be that dude. Don't be that chica at all, right? So when we're talking about taking breaks, sometimes you have to take a break and shift to something else, to shift and do something else for a minute, and then come back refreshed and your focus has reset. That's okay. That is okay. Sometimes students, and I've seen this a lot with gifted students, that they'll become almost obsessive. Like, I have to fix it. I have to figure it out. It's been a lot of different students, but especially it was most common with that that demographic of students, if you will. Like, I have to figure this out, and it's like too intense. They're obsessed. Pause, time out. Let's take a break. And that we're celebrating progress. And the last one takes some of that away, right? That anxiety, that need for what they think is perfection. If we're celebrating progress and the process, if those are celebrated, we're good to go. We're helping them shift their mindset. So these are the norms, these are the goals. All right, some quick integration tips. And you all, we are nearing our last couple of slides. So we talked about taking breaks. So even encouraging the young people to take some mindfulness breaks. You also have seen the bingo board. So there's some specific tasks there that have to do with reflections, right? Reflection questions after group activities, pairing students for peer feedback on their assignments. Before we start sharing out what you got, let them talk to each other. Well, we got different answers. Let's look, let's evaluate our own work. Let's evaluate the work together. Okay. Same thing at home. Well, when I solved it, I got 23, but you said you got 26. Let's look, let's evaluate. So again, them talking more, then sharing more. What if you end not just your day with gratitude reflections, but what if you in your lesson? What math skill are you thankful to have learned today? Right? What math skill are you thankful to have applied this week? Incorporate music. I've talked about it before. I'm very much so a music girl. But when it's quiet, that's when we know we're focused on problem solving time, when there's no sound besides just the pencil and the paper. And even maybe come up with a theme, a class mantra, a mantra for home. Yeah, just this is who we are. This is who we are. This is how we experience math. This is how we approach problems. Lots of options, lots of things to think about. And again, that many more on the bingo boards. Okay. All right, y'all. So we're going through these pretty quickly, but just in terms of what we call the scaffolding strategies, where again, for math life, people have to back it up. We have 3 phases of math that when you're learning math, learning a skill, you have to go through these phases. Concrete, where you're touching it, right? Representation, where then we have the picture or the drawing, and then abstract. Wow, we finally landed on that word problem. A lot of us are pressing fast forward. So we want to be clear to rewind it. So number sense, elementary, we might be using a number line for addition and subtraction before do it in your head, before mental math, right? Middle school, for geometry, we might be using 3D models to explore like surface area, right? So opening up the boxes. It might be where they have there's official math manipulatives for this, but also a lot of us have Amazon boxes. Open that box up and explore the surface area. Let them touch it, let them measure it and see it before getting to the formulas. They can see and understand where the formulas came from. High school, for these algebraic thinking, you all, the algebra tiles. Algebra tiles are basically these positives and negatives, right? And they're understanding how the variables work, where they come from. There's virtual ones, there's true physical ones, but they need to be able to touch and move and see, oh, so when I combine this positive number, like this +4 with this -4, they cancel each other out. The overlap became gray. It's a 0 now. Actually seeing that, having that experience to lean into, to refer back to before we build them up. Because again, we're pressing fast forward on math, and that is not the deal. That's not a good look. Okay, so the last thought, again, let them talk to their peers, y'all, about math. That is its own challenge, its own reason why sometimes math seems so exclusive, so unapproachable, because the very natural thing of talking about really anything and everything with your friends, it's excluded for math, right? We're not talking about it at home. We're not really talking much in the math classroom. So let them talk to their peers and their friends, truly. Right? It's not on an island. All right, y'all. So that has been the webinar. Are there any questions? Tell me what questions you have as we're exploring this. Okay, someone said, yeah, those less than enthusiastic responses. Using cash. Celebrate progress in the process. Yes, yes. So any questions? Okay, well, listen, if one hits you in a little bit, let me know. So one thing, reflection time. I want to know, what is just one strategy that you'll try next week? What is one strategy that you'll try next week? We talked about a lot of things. Okay, someone said the gratitude wrap up. Yeah, having them reflect. Having them reflect, period, right? We're reflecting now on this conversation. So what are you going to incorporate? What's one strategy that you'll try this week? Right? Are you going to rewind to make sure that whatever the concept is, if there's a manipulative, meaning something they can touch first before we start working the problem, will it be that? Right? We're going back to level 1, phase 1 of the math process, the concrete before doing the representation and then the abstract. Okay. Okay. Cool. So one more time, we said this earlier, but success in math comes from confidence. So we're talking about all these different ways, these different talking points, these different activities, these different tasks to build confidence and make sure they're making connections. We were super specific a little bit ago about some of the real world connections. Just some ideas, some thoughts. All right. So the final thought here, y'all, every time we're talking with our young people about math, now it might feel like a crisis at first, right? They might say, okay, I'm getting a little anxious. But I still want you to remember that even if that's how they're feeling, we can help them understand this, that in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of 2 characters. It's danger with opportunity. So crisis is a little bit of danger mixed with opportunity, but we want to make sure we help the young people emphasize and understand the opportunity side, because sometimes it only feels dangerous when we're working in math. It's like, if I mess up, I don't know what's going to happen. I might get in trouble. I might get my phone taken. All these different things, but there's opportunity when they understand the life connection, when they understand the real world connection, and then just the overall balance and growth, right? As we help them, again, celebrate the progress in their process. Thank you all again so much for joining. I'm going to drop the link for a survey. Y'all feel free to take the survey and leave me some feedback there. But again, thank y'all for joining. I hope you learned some things. I hope you enjoyed the information this evening. I enjoyed having you here with me. Here we go. All right. There we go. Okay. All right. So again, if there aren't any questions, I hope y'all have a good night, and I can't wait to read y'all's feedback. And especially you all, let me know which strategies you all decide to try this week. Okay. Bye-bye. Good night.